Emma suddenly opened her eyes. For a moment, she thought she had fallen asleep. Then she looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. She and turned onto her other side. The room was dark. The city outside her apartment window was silent. But inside Emma's mind, the day was starting all over again.
Why did I hesitate?
The question appeared without warning. A patient's face flashed through her memory. A simple question, a simple conversation, a simple moment. Yet Emma had replayed it at least 20 times already.
I should have answered faster.
She pulled the blanket over her shoulders. 5 seconds later, another thought arrived.
What if he thought I didn't understand English? What if Dr. Miller noticed?
Emma squeezed her eyes shut. She wanted to stop thinking. Instead, her mind became even louder. Now it wasn't replaying the past, it was creating the future.
What if tomorrow is worse? What if someone asks something I can't answer? What if I freeze completely?
Emma sat up in bed. Her heart felt heavy, not because anything bad had happened, because her imagination kept telling her something bad would happen. She reached for her interpreter notebook. Maybe she needed more practice. Maybe she needed more vocabulary. Maybe she wasn't good enough yet. Page after page, she searched for answers. But the more she studied, the more nervous she became. A few minutes later, she checked the clock again. 12:09 a.m. 22 minutes had passed. Nothing had changed. The room was still quiet. Tomorrow had not arrived. No patient was waiting. No doctor was asking questions. No disaster was happening. Only Emma's thoughts.
Why can't I stop thinking about things that haven't even happened?
Emma didn't realize it yet, but tonight she was about to discover something important. Sometimes the thing keeping us awake at night isn't the problem itself. It's the story we're telling ourselves about it. Emma pulled the blanket over her head. Maybe if she stopped looking at the clock, she could finally sleep. She closed her eyes. For a few seconds, everything was quiet. Then the memory returned. Not the whole day, just one moment, one question, one pause.
Why am I still thinking about that?
Earlier that afternoon, a patient had approached the reception desk holding a folder of medical papers. He looked nervous.
Excuse me, is this the right place for my appointment?
Emma remembered glancing at the papers. For a brief moment, she wasn't sure. The waiting room had been crowded. Phones were ringing. People were asking questions from every direction. She checked the form, then answered.
Yes, you're in the right place. Please go to room 204.
Oh, good. I was worried I came to the wrong building.
Don't worry, you're exactly where you need to be.
Thank you.
The patient smiled. Then he walked away. That was it. The conversation had lasted less than half a minute. Nothing had gone wrong. Yet Emma's mind refused to let it go.
I hesitated.
She stared at the ceiling.
He probably noticed.
A new version of the memory appeared.
Are you sure?
Emma opened her eyes. That wasn't what he had said, but her mind kept rewriting the conversation.
What if I looked uncertain? What if he stopped trusting me?
The memory changed again. This time the patient looked disappointed, then confused, then concerned. Each version felt more convincing than the last, even though none of them had happened. Emma sat up and rubbed her forehead. Deep down, she knew the truth. The patient had thanked her. The conversation had ended. The problem was over. But her mind wasn't interested in facts. It was interested in possibilities, and possibilities never seemed to end. Emma looked at the clock. 12:21 a.m. She sighed. If one tiny conversation could keep her awake this long, what would happen when she started thinking about tomorrow? And almost immediately, her mind answered that question. Emma lowered herself back onto the pillow. Maybe she was finally done thinking about the patient. Maybe she could finally sleep. She closed her eyes. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then, a new thought appeared.
What if tomorrow is worse?
The question arrived so quickly that it almost felt automatic. Emma stared into the darkness. Tomorrow hadn't started, nothing had happened yet, but her mind was already preparing for disaster.
What if someone asks a question I don't understand?
Almost instantly, her imagination created a scene. Emma was standing at the hospital reception desk. The waiting area was crowded, phones were ringing, patients were lining up. A man stepped forward.
Excuse me, could you explain these instructions?
Emma looked at the paper. The words seemed unfamiliar. Her mind went blank.
I...
People in line began waiting. The silence grew longer.
What if that happens?
The imaginary scene disappeared, only to be replaced by another. Now, Emma was sitting beside Dr. Miller during a consultation.
Emma, could you explain the treatment plan to the patient?
In Emma's imagination, every word suddenly vanished from her memory. She couldn't remember the right phrase. She couldn't remember the right explanation. Everyone was waiting.
What if I freeze completely?
The scene changed again. This time the patient looked frustrated. The doctor looked disappointed. The room felt tense. None of it was real. Yet Emma's heart reacted as if it were happening right now. She sat up and took a deep breath.
Why does everything seem like a disaster before it even happens?
Because overthinking rarely asks one question. It asks dozens. What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if everyone notices? What if I can't handle it? And every question creates another imaginary problem. Emma looked at the clock. 12:37 a.m. She had spent nearly 30 minutes worrying about situations that existed only inside her mind. The strange part? Every disaster felt convincing, even though none of them had happened.
Maybe I just need to prepare more.
Emma reached for her interpreter notebook again. She thought she had found the solution, but she was about to discover that preparation and overthinking are not the same thing. Emma switched on the bedside lamp. The soft yellow light filled the room. If sleep wasn't coming, maybe studying would help. At least that felt productive. Emma opened her interpreter notebook. Page after page of English phrases stared back at her. Expressions for appointments, medical instructions, patient questions, emergency situations. She had practiced most of them dozens of times. Yet tonight, none of them felt like enough.
Maybe I need to learn more.
She turned another page, then another, then another.
What if a patient asks something I've never heard before?
Emma grabbed a pen. She began writing new vocabulary words in the margin. A few minutes later, she added more, then more. The list kept growing. But strangely, her confidence didn't.
Maybe I should review consultation phrases again.
She flipped backward. 5 minutes later, she flipped forward again, then backward, then forward. Not because she was learning, because she was searching for certainty, and certainty was nowhere to be found.
What if I forget everything tomorrow?
She quickly reviewed another page, then another, then another. Every phrase reminded her of something she didn't know. Every word led to another word she thought she should learn. The notebook that normally helped her feel prepared was now making her feel overwhelmed. Emma rubbed her eyes. She was tired, but she couldn't stop.
Just one more page.
10 minutes later, she said the same thing again.
Just one more page.
The clock continued moving. 12:51 a.m., then 12:58 a.m., then 1:06 a.m. The more Emma studied, the more anxious she became. Because she wasn't studying to learn, she was studying to eliminate every possible mistake. And that was impossible. No notebook could prepare her for every question. No person knew every answer. No employee went through an entire day without making a single mistake. But overthinking doesn't care about what is realistic. It demands perfection. Emma slowly lowered the notebook. For the first time that night, she looked around the room. The bed was untouched. The light was still on. The notebook was full of notes, and she felt worse than she had an hour ago.
Why isn't this helping?
Emma had spent the entire night trying to solve problems that didn't exist, and now she was exhausted from fighting battles that had never happened. The room became quiet again. Emma stared at the notebook. For the first time, she wondered if the problem wasn't her English. Maybe the problem was the way she was thinking. A few seconds later, her phone screen suddenly lit up beside the bed. Emma stared at the glowing phone screen. A message had appeared. Still awake? Emma looked at the clock. 1:11 a.m. She hesitated for a moment. Then she tapped the call button. A few seconds later, Rianne answered.
Emma?
Sorry, did I wake you?
No, but judging by your voice, you definitely haven't slept.
Emma gave a small laugh, the kind people make when they're tired and frustrated at the same time.
Is it that obvious?
Very.
For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then everything Emma had been holding inside finally started coming out.
I can't stop thinking.
About what?
Everything. The patient I talked to today, tomorrow's appointments, making mistakes, forgetting words, saying the wrong thing. I keep replaying things over and over.
Rianne listened quietly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush to give advice.
I know it sounds ridiculous, but every time I stop worrying about one thing, my mind finds something else.
That doesn't sound ridiculous. It sounds exhausting.
Emma looked down at the notebook beside her. Pages of notes, hours of studying. And somehow she felt less confident than before.
I thought studying would make me feel better. It didn't.
How long have you been awake?
Since before midnight.
And how many disasters have happened since then?
Emma blinked.
What?
Since you started worrying, how many of the things you're afraid of have actually happened?
Emma opened her mouth, then stopped.
Any angry patients?
No.
Any confused doctors?
No.
Any emergencies caused by your English?
Of course not.
Rianne waited. Emma slowly realized where the conversation was going.
So, where are all these disasters happening?
Emma looked around her room. The quiet bed, the notebook, the clock, the dark window.
In my head.
Exactly.
For the first time that night, Emma didn't immediately argue with the thought.
Emma, can I ask you something?
Sure.
When you helped that patient today, how did the conversation end?
He thanked me.
And then?
He walked away.
So the conversation ended successfully?
I guess so.
Then why are you treating it like a failure?
Emma didn't have an answer, because the truth was simple. She wasn't judging herself based on what happened. She was judging herself based on what might have happened.
You've spent hours preparing for problems that don't exist.
Emma glanced at the clock. 1:16 a.m. 5 minutes. That was all this conversation had taken. Yet it had already helped more than an entire hour of worrying.
So how do I stop?
Rianne smiled.
That's the wrong question.
Emma frowned.
The better question is, how do you tell the difference between a real problem and an imaginary one?
Emma sat up a little straighter. For the first time all night, she wasn't thinking about disasters. She was listening. And the answer was about to change everything. Emma sat quietly. The room felt different now. Not because anything had changed. The notebook was still there, the clock was still ticking, tomorrow was still waiting. But for the first time that night, Emma wasn't running from one worry to another. She was thinking.
Let me ask you something.
Okay.
What's the difference between a fact and a story?
A fact is something that's true. A story is something you make up?
Close. A fact is what happened. A story is the meaning we attach to what happened.
Emma thought about that for a moment.
Let's use your patient from today. What happened?
He asked where his appointment was.
Then what?
I checked his papers.
Then?
I told him where to go.
Then?
He thanked me and left.
Good. Now tell me the facts.
The patient asked a question. I checked the information. I answered. He thanked me. He left.
Exactly.
Emma nodded slowly. Nothing in those facts sounded terrible. Nothing sounded embarrassing. Nothing sounded like a disaster.
Now tell me the story.
Emma hesitated. Then she laughed softly.
The story is that I paused for a second. And that means I looked unprofessional. The patient lost confidence in me. Everyone noticed. And I'm probably bad at my job.
Did any of that actually happen?
No.
For a moment, neither of them spoke. The answer sounded obvious when she said it aloud.
That's what overthinking does. It takes a fact, then it builds a story on top of it. And after a while, you forget which part was real.
Emma looked down at her notebook. The realization was uncomfortable, because she could suddenly see the pattern, not just tonight, many times before.
So I've been reacting to stories instead of facts.
Exactly.
Rian leaned back in his chair.
Let's try another one. You said you're worried about tomorrow. What's the fact?
Tomorrow I'll be working at the hospital.
Good. Anything else?
There will be patients, questions, conversations.
Those are facts. Now, what's the story?
Someone will ask something I don't understand. I'll freeze. Everyone will notice. I'll embarrass myself.
Has that happened?
No.
Could it happen?
Maybe.
And that's where people get stuck.
Emma listened carefully.
Just because something could happen doesn't mean it will happen.
The sentence hit harder than Emma expected, because almost every worry she had that night started with the same words. What if? What if? What if?
Your mind keeps treating possibilities like guarantees, but they're not the same thing.
Emma stared at the clock. 1:24 a.m. Hours of worry suddenly looked different, not because her problems had disappeared, but because she could finally see them clearly.
Whenever you feel yourself overthinking, ask 2 questions.
What questions?
First, what's the fact? Second, what's the story I'm adding to it?
Emma repeated the questions quietly, almost like she was writing them into memory.
What's the fact? What's the story?
Exactly.
The room became quiet. For the first time all night, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in hours. Space. A small distance between herself and her thoughts. And in that space, the worries suddenly seemed much less powerful. Tomorrow would still come. There would still be questions. There would still be mistakes. But now Emma had something stronger than certainty. She had perspective. The next morning arrived much faster than Emma expected. Sunlight streamed through her apartment window. The city was awake. And despite all her worrying, the world looked exactly the same. A few hours later, Emma walked through the hospital entrance. Doctors hurried down hallways, nurses reviewed schedules, patients filled the waiting area. A normal day. Nothing more, nothing less. As Emma approached the reception desk, a familiar nervousness returned. Not as strong as last night, but still there. Emma took a slow breath.
What's the fact?
The question immediately slowed her thoughts. Fact. She was at work. Fact. Patients would ask questions. Fact. She would do her best to help them. Everything else was a story. Just as Emma finished organizing the reception desk, she heard a voice behind her.
Emma, do you have a moment?
Instantly, her stomach tightened. The reaction was automatic. Before Dr. Miller could say another word, her mind started working.
Did I make a mistake?
A second passed.
Is this about yesterday?
Another second. The old habit returned. Maybe a patient complained. Maybe she had done something wrong. Maybe. Then she stopped herself.
What's the fact?
The fact was simple. Dr. Miller wanted to talk. That was all. Everything else was a story. Emma turned around.
Of course. Dr. Miller smiled.
I just wanted to thank you for helping that nervous patient yesterday.
Emma blinked. Dr. Miller continued.
He stopped by this morning before his appointment. He said you were very patient and kind. It made a difficult day much easier for him.
For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. Last night, she had imagined disappointment. She had imagined criticism. She had imagined failure. But reality looked completely different.
Really?
Absolutely. You did a great job.
Dr. Miller gave a small nod before continuing down the hallway. Emma stood quietly at the desk. Hours of worry, hours of imaginary disasters, and none of them had been true. In fact, the opposite was true.
I spent half the night worrying about a problem that never existed.
A small smile appeared on her face. For the first time, Emma wasn't just understanding Rianne's lesson, she was experiencing it. Just then, another patient approached the reception desk. Emma straightened her posture. A new conversation was about to begin, and this time, she was ready to face reality instead of imagination. The morning continued. Patients arrived. Appointments began. The hospital buzzed with its usual energy. For the first time all day, Emma felt calm. Not perfectly confident, not completely fearless, just calmer. A few minutes later, a patient approached the reception desk holding a medical appointment card.
Good morning. Could you tell me where I need to go for my blood test?
Of course. Let me check for you.
Emma looked at the appointment card, then at the computer screen, then back at the card. Everything seemed normal.
You'll need to go to Laboratory B on the second floor.
Laboratory B.
Yes, second floor.
The patient nodded. But before he could walk away, Emma glanced at the screen one more time. Her stomach dropped.
Wait.
She looked again, then again. The appointment wasn't in Laboratory B, it was in Laboratory D. Emma had read the wrong line.
Oh no.
For a brief moment, last night's fears rushed back. The embarrassment, the worry, the familiar voice in her head.
I made a mistake.
But this time, something was different. Instead of imagining the worst outcome, Emma focused on the facts. Fact, she had given the wrong direction. Fact, she noticed the mistake immediately. Fact, she could correct it. Emma looked up.
I'm sorry, I read the wrong appointment line. You're actually scheduled for Laboratory D, not Laboratory B. Thank you for waiting.
No problem. Thanks for checking. Emma blinked. That was it. No anger, no frustration, no disaster. The patient simply smiled.
I'm glad you caught it before I left.
Me too.
Have a good day.
You too.
The patient walked away. The conversation lasted less than a minute. Yet Emma stood quietly for a moment, not because she was upset, because she had just learned something important. Last night she had imagined making mistakes. She had imagined embarrassment. She had imagined people judging her. Now a real mistake had actually happened, and reality looked nothing like her imagination.
People don't expect perfection.
A small smile appeared on her face. The mistake wasn't the problem. Pretending mistakes never happen would have been the problem. What mattered was noticing it, correcting it, and moving forward. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt something stronger than confidence. She felt trust. Trust that she could handle whatever happened next, even if it wasn't perfect.
That evening, Emma returned home feeling tired. Not exhausted, not overwhelmed, just tired in the normal way people feel after a busy day. She changed into comfortable clothes, made herself a cup of tea, and eventually climbed into bed. The room looked exactly the same as it had the night before. The same window, the same nightstand, the same clock, the same interpreter notebook. Yet something felt different. Emma switched off the lamp and settled beneath the blanket. A few moments later, the familiar voice appeared. What if tomorrow is difficult?
The question hung in the darkness. The night before, that single thought would have started an avalanche. Hours of worry, dozens of imaginary disasters, endless preparation. But tonight, Emma paused.
What's the fact?
A small smile appeared on her face.
The fact is, tomorrow is a work day.
She looked at the clock. 10:48 p.m., much earlier than the night before.
And the story?
Emma thought for a moment.
The story is that everything will go wrong.
She nodded to herself. Not because the thought had disappeared, because she finally recognized it for what it was. A story. Not a prediction, not a certainty, just a thought.
I'll handle tomorrow when tomorrow gets here.
The room became quiet. No notebook, no frantic studying, no imaginary conversations. Just silence. Peaceful silence. Emma closed her eyes. Outside, the city continued moving. Inside, her mind finally slowed down. Tomorrow would still bring questions. It would still bring challenges. It might even bring mistakes. But Emma no longer needed certainty before she could rest. She only needed perspective. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. A few minutes later, Emma was asleep. Most of us have experienced a night like Emma's. A small mistake becomes a big problem. A simple worry becomes a disaster. A possibility becomes a certainty. And before we realize it, we're fighting battles that only exist inside our minds. The strange thing about overthinking is that it often feels useful. It feels like preparation. It feels like problem solving. It feels responsible. But many times, we're not preparing for reality. We're preparing for stories. Stories that may never happen. Emma didn't solve every problem in her life. She didn't become perfect. She didn't stop making mistakes. What changed was something much simpler. She learned to ask.
What's the fact? And what's the story I'm adding to it?
Sometimes that single question is enough to create space between you and your worries, enough to slow a racing mind, enough to finally rest. The next time you find yourself awake at night, replaying the past or fearing the future, Remember Emma. Remember the facts. And remember that not every thought deserves your trust. Some thoughts are warnings. Others are just stories. And knowing the difference can change everything.